I think it's entirely fair to ask them. And it's not adequate to say anyone who asked them is somehow desecrating the memory of little girls who died in Texas. I'm not going to put up with that answer. I don't care who gives that answer. That is not acceptable. And I think the real answer is Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of intel services, probably not American. And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working? How does a guy go from being a math teacher at the Dalton School in the late 70s with no college degree to having multiple airplanes, a private island, and the largest residential house in Manhattan? I think it's entirely fair to ask them. And it's not adequate to say anyone who asked them is somehow desecrating the memory of little girls who died in Texas. I'm not going to put up with that answer. I don't care who gives that answer. That is not acceptable. And I think the real answer is Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of intel services, probably not American. And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working? How does a guy go from being a math teacher at the Dalton School in the late 70s with no college degree to having multiple airplanes, a private island, and the largest residential house in Manhattan? Where did all the money come from? And no one has ever gotten to the bottom of that because no one has ever tried. And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that. There's nothing anti-Semitic about saying that. There's nothing even anti-Israel about saying that. I've spent my entire life pretty much in Washington, where I knew and loved a number of people, including one very close person who worked at CIA. That has never prohibited me from saying, I think the CIA has done some horrible things, murdered a bunch of people, participated in the murder of a sitting U.S. president. It's got a whole trail of crimes. That doesn't make me a disloyal American. It doesn't make me anti-American in any sense. I was born here. My family's been here for hundreds of years. I love this country. That's why I live here. So criticizing the behavior of a government agency does not make you a hater. It makes you a free person. It makes you a citizen. You're allowed to do that because you're not a slave. You're a citizen. And you have a right to expect that your government will not act against your interests, and you have a right to demand that foreign governments not be allowed to act against your interests. That's not creepy. It shouldn't be forbidden. And yet all of us have trained ourselves to believe that you can't say that somehow, that that's like too naughty and forbidden. And the effect of making that off limits has been to create a lot of resentment, and I'll say it, hate online, where people feel like they can't just say, like, what the hell is this? You have the former Israeli prime minister living in your house. You have had all this contact with the foreign government. Were you working on behalf of Mossad? Were you running a blackmail operation on behalf of a foreign government? By the way, every single person in Washington, D.C. thinks that. I've never met anyone who doesn't think that. I don't know any of them that hate Israel, but no one feels they can say that. Why? And I think the longer that we play along with it, the more subterranean and creepy and hateful the conversation actually becomes. So I think it's better just to say it right out loud. Did this happen? And of course that question has been asked to the government of Israel, and their answer is, we're not going to tell you. And I think our answer should be, no. As long as we're sending you money, if you were committing crimes on our soil, we have an absolute right to know, did you do this or not? Even now, when people talk about this topic, I can promise you, since I spent all day on the phone yesterday on this topic with informed people, they're like whispering certain words. And I'm like, why are we whispering? Why should I be ashamed as an American about wanting to know what the hell that just was? Why should I be embarrassed? I'm not the bad guy here. Why should I be embarrassed to ask, what's in this war for us? We got to go to war. Shut up. You're a bigot if you don't want it. First of all, I'm not a bigot. But second, that's kind of not the point. The point is, what's in it for us? Why is this a good idea? Shut up. And it's exactly the style of argument that I voted against, and I will never accept it. I don't care who does it. I will never accept that. You may say, as a good friend of mine who's like totally deranged, but a good person, said to me yesterday, Iran is the biggest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. You know, reading the talking point that apparently everyone, a bumper sticker that is for sale somewhere, I guess. And I'm like, okay, I don't even know what that means exactly, but how many Americans have been killed by Shia terrorism in my lifetime, which is 56 years? I can't think of any. I'm sure there have been some in the United States. There have been Shia terror attacks sponsored by Iran in the U.S. I can't think of any. There was 9/11. That was a Sunni terror attack. And then there's the drug epidemic, which has killed more than 1 million people during that same period. People I know, my next-door neighbor's kid, dead. People, a bunch of people I know have died, and a bunch have been totally screwed up and taken out of life, basically. Their lives have been hollowed out. They're husks. They've been totally destroyed by drugs. That's the reality that I live in the United States. So you're telling me Iran is a bigger threat than the people peddling this garbage? I don't think so. Not where I live, it's not. Oh, shut up. And the person literally said, you know, we're going to have to agree to disagree. Disagree with what? What are you even talking about? But at least he gave me an answer. He didn't say, oh, you hate so-and-so. He didn't go immediately to motive. This is when you know you're dealing with someone who has zero interest in getting to the truth of the question and instead is trying to make you be quiet in order to roll over you and make you obey. And the tell is when they go immediately to motive. Well, you just hate some group, or you're taking money from some other group. And neither one happens to be true in my case, but I always feel like saying, well, okay, what if I am getting paid? Or what if I have some kind of creepy bigotry? Which I don't, because I think it's immoral. God created individuals. Each one knows the hairs on your head. Each person has a soul. No person is seen by God as a member of a group. Each person is seen by God as an individual. So I don't like that. And I really don't. I'm not just saying that. And I mean every individual on the planet, regardless of what he looks like or what he believes. That is true of every person. And I sincerely mean that. But even if I didn't, maybe I was some like full wacko. And maybe I was like taking tons of money from some bad country, one of the bad countries you're not allowed to talk about or like. Qatar! Qatar is kind of controlling our conversation. Qatar. Evil Qatar. I am laughing. I've actually been to Qatar. It's awesome. Never taken $1 from the Qataris or the Qataris or whatever they're called. It's a great country. But whatever. But even if I was like on the payroll of Qatar, which I guess I can't now, but anyway, even if I was, it still wouldn't make the question any less relevant. Why is this a good idea? And their refusal to answer that question lets you know right away that you are not dealing with a person of good faith. You're dealing with a propagandist who is trying to control you. At exactly that point, that's when you say out loud, I know who you are. This is all fake. You can't even answer the question. You're trying to make me shut up because I'm a bigot, like the liberals did 7 months ago. And that's why we voted them out. So I'm not putting up with that. I voted against this, and I won't tolerate it. Credit card debt is the single biggest cause of human suffering that I'm aware of in the United States. It's not Iran. Iran's not doing that. Oh, you, a tool of the Ayatollah. No. I'm actually Episcopalian, not Shiite. Not a tool of the Ayatollah. I'm just very committed to observing physical reality and drawing my conclusions from that. I'm what we call a physicalist. I believe in the things right in front of me, the things I can touch and smell. And the people I can touch and smell are suffering not from Iran, not from Qatar. They're suffering from their credit cards and their inability of their kids to buy a house. Yeah. I don't think Dan Crenshaw is sold on this. Dan Crenshaw believes our threats are in other countries. Okay, they may be, but how are they bigger than credit card interest?